With us finally having the opportunity to see a traditional fantastical Batman in James Gunn's DCU, I think that the topic of what gear he should use is something that should be talked about. And that's because Batman's use of gadgets is very important when it comes to his effectiveness in combat, especially if he's going to be in a universe where he could run into characters like Brainiac, Darkseid, the Anti-Monitor, etc. And again, because of this universe embracing all of those elements from the source material, they can really go all out with Batman's use of technology and his intelligence in this universe. So in this video, I'm going to be going over the gadgets that I personally want to see Batman utilize in the DCU. But before we get into the video, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share if you enjoy the content, and also hit that hype button if you have the feature available. Diving right into the topic, I think that the best way to approach this is to separate the gear into different categories. And by categories, I more so mean a tiering system, so we'll obviously have a tier for the lower end gadgets, a tier for the mid-tier gadgets, and then the high-tier gadgets. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm also going to add a category for different armors that he would use in different scenarios. Starting off with the low tier gadgets, obviously we have the household names like the batarang, the grapple gun, and the smoke bombs, but personally I don't think that Batman has ever utilized these gadgets to their fullest extent in live action. And what I mean by that is that he either rarely utilizes these gadgets or he doesn't utilize them in a creative way like he does in the source material. The closest I would say that we've ever come to seeing Batman utilize his batarangs in a creative manner would be in The Flash 2023 when we see Michael Keaton Batman utilize the batarang to ricochet across multiple walls before taking down an enemy. While that scene is a really cool display of Batman's batarang usage, I think that we can get even better. Seeing him do things like throw multiple batarangs out of each hand, ricocheting multiple batarangs at a time, showcasing his marksmanship. These are all ways that I would like to see DCU Batman utilize his batarangs. As far as the grapple gun is concerned, instead of Batman simply using it to get from the ground to the top of a building, like I've said in the past, I would really like to see Batman get full-on swinging scenes through the city. And I would want these swinging scenes to be as epic in scope as Spider-Man swinging scenes. Now, I'm not saying that they have to stylistically look the same because obviously both Batman and Spider-Man operate differently in terms of traversing the city, but the amount of care that goes into making those Spider-Man scenes is the same amount of care I want to see in those Batman swinging scenes. And believe it or not, Batman swinging is as important to his character as it is to Spider-Man because that's literally how Batman gets around Gotham City when he isn't in his vehicles. And you can find Batman swinging through Gotham City in about 95% of his comics. And he's still extremely acrobatic while doing so because he is in fact a ninja. So even though he shouldn't look exactly like Spider-Man, Batman should still have some acrobatic nature to his swinging, and he should also be parkouring through the city. As far as the smoke bombs, I would say that this is probably the gadget that gets utilized the most in terms of accuracy, but personally I would just like to see it utilized a little bit more, especially when Batman is performing stealth operations. I think if Batman is in situations similar to the Arkham games where he has to carefully pick off opponents while either grappling to different vantage points or moving on the floor, his smoke pellets can be utilized to help aid his effectiveness in those situations, even though he doesn't necessarily need to rely on them. Other low-level gadgets that I would like to see from the DCU Batman are things like his batarang variants and also other projectile variants. So think things like hypersonic batarangs, ice batarangs, electric batarangs, explosive batarangs, regular explosive bombs, flash bangs, concussions, stun grenades, etc., etc. All of these projectiles would in fact be considered low-level for Batman because of the fact that these are things that he commonly utilizes throughout his patrol of Gotham City. That being said, I do want to clarify that even though these are low-level gadgets, Batman does have the same types of gadgets in the higher tiers. So for example, explosive batarangs, which is probably the easiest example that I can give you. Obviously, Batman can utilize these explosive batarangs to blow through small things like walls or even cars, but he also has higher tier explosive batarangs that he could utilize to damage mid-tiers and high-tier characters like Superman, Damage, the Shaggy Man, etc. And I'll get into more of the higher end versions of those gadgets later on in this video. But again, all these variations of projectiles are important for Batman to have at his disposal because it plays into what makes him so versatile, especially if Batman is in a situation where he's physically outmatched. That being said, another important thing that I want to see Batman utilize that I would also consider low tier is the different variations of sight that he has in his cowl. Batman, with the usage of his lenses in his cowl, is able to do things like magnify his vision to see great distances. He can also see in all known spectrums of light. He also has a variation of sight that allows him to see through walls and other objects, so much so that he can even see people who go invisible. And he also has traditional X-ray vision that allows him to see internal organs and skeletons. He also obviously has ultraviolet mode, night vision, and obviously infrared vision. He also has multiple ways to scan substances or even crime scenes to help aid his detective work. We specifically see this technology implemented in things like the Arkham games, and it was simply dubbed detective mode. I would pretty much want to see this exact thing for the DCU Batman. I would want to see him be able to scan crime scenes. I would want to be able to see him scan bodies for weaknesses and vital signs, pretty much the whole nine. Another aspect of Batman's cowl that I would also like to go over is his hearing. Very similar to how Batman can magnify his vision to see really far away, Batman can also amplify his hearing so that he can hear really far away. He also has dampeners built into his cowl so that he can naturally be protected from high frequency sounds, and he can also utilize echolocation via his cowl. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we'll move into the mid to high level gadgets that Batman should utilize, starting things off with those projectiles that I mentioned earlier. Obviously, like I already mentioned, Batman has explosive batarangs that are strong enough to damage higher tier characters. Because of the fact that Batman is in a DC universe that's going to have these higher end characters, it would make sense for him to also have these types of weapons that can contend with said characters. So I would love to see Batman win in a battle with a character like Darkseid or Mongol use an explosive batarang that can damage them. And this is something that we've already seen with Michael Keaton's Batman in the Flash movie when he was able to actually damage a Kryptonian with one of his explosives. It's also worth noting that Batman also has batarangs that are sharp enough to pierce through these characters as well, because we've seen him do things like pierce through Darkseid with his batarangs. Now, in this specific instance, they don't tell us what alloy his batarangs are made of, but we can just infer that they're made of a very strong DC Universe metal like promethium or even nth metal. And this wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility considering that Batman does in fact carry nth metal batarangs. We've also seen Batman carry nth metal alloy gauntlets that he made with the help of Dr. Fate that literally give him the ability to wipe certain things from existence. And the reason why he can do that is because the nth metal gauntlet matches your dimensional frequency and attacks it directly. Obviously, because of the fact that Batman doesn't kill, he would only utilize something like this against a spirit, or like in this instance a dimensional anomaly, or even something that's magical in nature. But again, in a fantastical DC universe, these are all threats that he could reasonably be up against, so I would still want to see him utilize things like this as well. As far as other projectiles, very similar to his explosives, again, he can range these projectiles from the low tier to the high tier. So when it comes to things like knockout gas, he has knockout gas that's effective enough to just put down a human, and he also has knockout gas that's potent enough to put down high tier characters like Superman and Wonder Woman. So much so that he's even supplied all the members of the Bat family with this level of technology as well. And the same exact logic could also be applied to Batman's tranquilizers. As far as his other sensory weapons like hypersonics, flashbangs, stun grenades, concussions, etc., these all again range from the low tier to the high tier, so he can employ them against humans and also against any mid to high level threat. Other projectiles that Batman may use for restraint, such as his hardening foam, are also very important for him to utilize in the DCU as well. And his hardening foam is extremely powerful, having shown to be able to restrain temporarily characters like Damage. He was also shown to be able to temporarily restrain a character like Failsafe, who was strong enough to clash with Superman in his suit that was protecting him from kryptonite and also contend Martian Manhunter. The same hardening foam is also strong enough to stop entire skyscrapers from collapsing. And I know at this point I sound like a broken record, but Batman also has a lower tier version of this gadget as well, because he does use his hardening foam at times against humans and also street tier level threats. On top of this, Batman also consistently makes use of high-end electrical batarangs and also high-end tasers. So much so that we've legit seen him one-shot characters like Ultra Humanite with a taser. Moving over to gadgets that Batman actually has built into his suit, a lot of people don't actually know this, but Batman's cape, cowl, and gauntlets are actually capable of energy absorption. This is why we see Batman utilize his cape to block things like energy attacks and also bullets. And he also utilizes his gauntlets in a similar fashion. That being said, these areas of Batman's suit can absorb energy to a ridiculously high degree, because it's been verbatim stated that he can actually absorb near Darkseid level energy attacks with these parts of his suit. That same energy that he absorbs can then be transferred to help boost his striking power in things like his seismic gauntlets, which is probably his most powerful gadget of all. And these gauntlets have been seen consistently across multiple forms of Batman media, such as the Arkham games and also the Batman Brave and the Bold cartoon, where he utilizes these same gauntlets to punch on Darkseid. And in the comics, they're equally as powerful because, again, not only can he channel near Darkseid level energy absorption to these gauntlets, we've also seen him damage characters like Superman so much so with these gauntlets that he's able to temporarily free him from the mind control of the Spectre. And on top of that, these gauntlets are also stated verbatim to be able to harm characters in the Superman tier. But again, because it's Batman and he's not always fighting high tier characters, he does have a way that he can augment these weapons so that he's not always punching at max capacity. So Batman has literally shown us that he can quite literally adjust the output of these gauntlets. And we've seen him do it against the likes of Killer Croc in the current Matt Fraction run, and we've also seen him do it against characters like Eradicator. Out of all the gadgets I named, I probably want these to be in the DCU the most, because I really like the idea of Batman getting up close and personal with the higher tier threats. I've always hated the idea of Batman kind of sitting on the sidelines and yelling commands instead of actually getting into the fight with the other characters like Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Aquaman, Green Lantern, etc. So Batman Batman having these gauntlets that allow him to get up and close and actually deal significant damage to me is very important. And I'm not saying that you have to do it in a way that doesn't make sense, because obviously these characters are still going to be a lot faster than Batman. So what I would do is have Batman do something like utilize his sensory gadgets like a flashbang or something to distract these characters and then give him an opening to land the devastating blow. Or again, he could work in tandem with his teammates and allow them to create openings for him. Long story short, I'd just like to see Batman be competent against higher end opponents in close quarters combat, because that's literally what he does in the source material, whether it's with his own martial arts skill alone or with the augmentation of gadgets. Another thing that I find cool about Batman's cape, and it's something that I've explained in the how I would design the DCU Batsuit video, is that even though Batman's cape has the ability to protect against devastating energy attacks, because of his cape being made of smart armor, Batman's cape is still susceptible to being cut through by very strong knives or very sharp weapons, or even some types of bullets. And that's because Batman has to physically make his cape rigid to defend against said projectiles. And this exact phenomenon is explained perfectly to us in Batman Begins.
Regularly flexible, but put a current through it, molecules realign, becomes rigid.
So very similar to Batman Begins in the source material, the cape also operates the same exact way, except it's much stronger when it becomes rigid. And the reason why Batman designs his cape like this is so that when he's in combat or when he's moving, he can have the flexibility and agility through his cape not being rigid. And obviously when his cape is rigid, he could use it as a shield, and he could also utilize it to glide and do other things. That being said, those are all the gadgets that I would like to see Batman utilize in base. And when I say base, I mean that these are just things that he has on him at all times. Obviously, I probably could have missed some things because of the fact that Batman has a shit ton of gadgets in the source material, so things like a kryptonite ring or just a piece of kryptonite could also be included as well, but you guys get the overall gist. As far as armored variants like the Hellbat armor, the final Batsuit, or even the Justice Buster, I would be completely open to seeing those things. However, I just personally wouldn't want to see Batman rely on those suits to be effective in combat against higher tier characters. But if it's like an endgame level event for the DCU and Batman decides to whip out like the Hellbat to fight Darkseid, I'm not going to complain about that whatsoever, and that makes perfect sense narratively. But with that being said, that is going to wrap it up for this video, ladies and gentlemen. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, subscribe, and share. Also hit that hype button, and as always, it's been your boy K the God. I'll catch you boys on the next one.